Ring ring, welcome to another episode of Crossplay Conversations, the show where we dive deep on the world of video games while keeping it light. I'm your host today, Jacob McCourt, and I have three friends with me today. We're going to introduce the regular friends first. Let's start with Luke Lewis. Hello.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here.
My second friend, another regular friend, it's Joseph Hooper. Hello.
Howdy.
And our third friend, extra special. We're bringing the Canadian quotient up to 50-50 on this show. It's Dave Proctor from Mighty Yell. Dave, hello.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
We're doing great. This show is all about you today, so I hope you're prepared to answer a bunch of questions.
That's my favorite topic. Has anyone made that joke before? I hope that everyone does.
Starting off strong.
Starting off strong. For folks who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah. My name's Dave, and I run a company called Mighty Yell. We founded in 2017 to make, weird and colorful, uplifting, nonviolent video games. Started with The Big Con, which released in 2021, and then we made A Night in the Attic, our VR title, in 2023. And we just announced our third official title, All Systems Dance, which is coming out in 2025 unless I am struck by lightning.
Lovely. And will you be at PAX West that's happening this week when we're listening to this episode?
Oh, yeah. I am at PAX West right now.
It's wild how time travel works, huh?
It's great, yeah. And it's possible that the game is also there.
We will see. But before we talk about All Systems Dance, we want to ask you a bunch of questions about you, your other games, and then obviously talk about the big game that's coming up in 25. But having creeped your LinkedIn really aggressively, my understanding is that you've had a bunch of roles before founding a studio, running a book press, doing project management for audio. What led you to dive into the world of video games after all those different career paths?
Yeah. Geez, I don't know. How deep you want me to go here? I think
go deep.
Excuse me. Let's go with, okay. So I always wanted to be a writer. That was my thing. And I used to write poems as a kid and short stories, and you couldn't keep paper out of my hand. And, I started my small press publishing company to release my own books. Because it was I want to write short novellas. I don't really care if anybody's interested in publishing that. I'm going to do it. So I learned how to run a book press and get books printed and stuff like that. And I'd been trying to be a writer for a very long time. And I'd also been playing games since I was 4. And I had an Xbox 360. And my Xbox 360 died, as they are wont to do. It hit the red ring. And I had this moment of maybe this is it. Maybe this, I'm 26 years old. Maybe this is where I get off, I've done this for a long time. Maybe this is the end of it for me.
Life or video games? Sorry.
No, yeah, I'm not going to jump off the viaduct or anything. I'm no, this is where I stop. It was just a console. This is where I stopped playing video games. And my partner, who, is still with me after all these years, said, if I may, this is what you do when you are happy and what you do when you're sad. This is your thing. You love video games. And I was fine, I'll buy a new Xbox. Grumpy. And I went to, a store, and they said there was a bundle, and I got a bundle, and it had 5 games in it. And one of the games was Alan Wake. And I played, and everything else was a game that you expect to be in a bundle. It was Halo, Gears, Halo Wars, and then Alan Wake for some reason. And so by the grace of God, I got to play this game, and I'm picking up all these little manuscript pages. And I was I wonder if anybody ever gets paid to write those. And then my brain just exploded. And I was oh my God, I should have been doing this the entire time. What have I been doing with my life? And that was it. I was I could not put the genie back in the bottle. It was video games. I went to school for it. I went to George Brown College here in Toronto because, again, my partner knew someone that taught there, and she was you should apply to this program because it was a 1-year postgrad. And when I went into that 1-year postgrad, I met all of my future company co-founders from 13 AM Games, and we made Runbow. And then I left in 2017 after Runbow hit Xbox, and they were already on the way to making their next game.
What's it like making games in Canada?
It's great. It's rough out there right now, and like it is not. There's no. I mean, we have this thing called socialized medicine, which is lovely. So I don't have to worry too much about like my health and my life, but we still have to put roofs over the heads of our team. But we have government funding at the federal and provincial level to help us make games, and like it's the competitive program. It's not easy. I'm just I write a grant and never take them for granted, and I will apply to get funding for. We have gotten funding for everything we've done, which is great. I might be very good at writing grants. Quality of video games is up to the audience, but the grant writing team really loves me at the Canadian Media Fund. So that's a huge help. It lets us take bigger, weirder risks. I get to make weird stuff, which is lovely. I like Gabby D'Organzo did a talk, and they were talking about Mortician's Tale, and they would have people come up to them and be like, how it's so amazing that you made this weird artsy game. Like, I want to do something like that. And they'd be like, no, like I had a arts council grant for this. Like, don't do that. It's very hard to make money on this. So I always have to say to people, like, our stories, we're very lucky. We're very, very lucky. And, it doesn't mean that our games sell any better. It doesn't mean that it's any easier to make them, but we have a little bit of I have one more person to call when we need funding for our next project.
I have a question, kind of going back and tying into all of this. You talked about how much you enjoyed writing and how that was kind of the catalyst in Alan Wake and all of that. So when you're making your games, what's your approach to it? Like, as someone who's excited about writing, is it that, okay, I want to put these themes out in the world? Or is it that I have these visions and these stories just in my head and I need to visualize this? Like, what is your approach as an artist who's like building these stories when you're trying to come up with these game ideas?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe not all, but a lot of my game ideas start with like, even a lot of my story ideas start with like a joke as a premise, like something that makes me laugh. And it not because like, it's like a guy slips on a banana peel, but it's like, what if you had to dance to defeat robots? Like I was reading Yuval Harari's 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and he was talking about how in which I always caveat saying, I don't know if he's been canceled. So anytime I read a book, I'm like, I thought it was fine. And if there's something out there, I won't read it again. Don't read it. But he said like the Industrial Revolution made it so that we didn't have to do manual labor, and the sort of, information revolution is making it so that we don't have to do intellectual labor. And me, in the morning, like before I had to go teach a class or something, giggling to myself goes, the only thing left is dance. And I say that out loud to myself, and I'm like, that's funny. and that is the germ of the seed of like where they come from. And then I actually have to find like a heart in it. I have to be like, well, okay, if we're going to do that, like, what does that actually mean? And then we start thinking, well, okay, these are themes that I think are important right now. And, how do I like, how can I kind of leverage this initial concept, which is the joke is starting to be abandoned, by this point. And then it's like, because I think the creative process is like something speaking to you. I'm borrowing that from Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, which is on my shelf, and I just looked at right now. So, like, if you get an idea, you got to kind of chase it. Elizabeth Gilbert has not been canceled, as far as I'm concerned. So, do read it.
You pray love, baby.
It's really good. She talks about how, like, if an idea visits you, you have to like follow it if you want to do something with it. So, what I do is something is interesting there, and then when I go deeper than the joke, I'm like, oh, we actually have the ability to talk about like automation and corporate overreach and the triumph of the human spirit. And in the Big Con, which I wanted to make a con artist movie. Like that was all I wanted to do. I was like, I want to make the best con artist movie ever. And it should be like, from that one, we actually teased the story out over time from some restrictions. So it was like, should be set in the 90s because everyone's doing 80s and everyone's doing 60s. That was like actually a marketing decision that we made. And then Jill Murray, our story writer, was like, what if you had to save a video store? And from there, she and I got to talk a lot about, again, corporate overreach and, Blockbuster and stuff like that. So the themes are always kind of the main thing that I want to bring out before a character necessarily appears, which is, that's just how I do it.
Sorry.
Go ahead, guys.
Sorry, I have one follow-up question before we get too far away from this. So I love that. And I feel like when you start the ideas from a place that's kind of organic like that, where I think this is funny or whatever, I feel like it kind of comes across in the game. Like, I think, some of my favorite games, like Psychonauts, for example, where you just play moments and you're like, that's just funny. Like, it's just fun. It's not like it was designed necessarily to make the player laugh. It's just like somebody thought this was funny, and you can tell when they put it there. So I guess my follow-up question is, next, you have your funny joke. How does the buy-in come from the rest of the team? Is it like we are all a collaborative group of writers? Or I've also seen like video game teams where this person is the artist and they're just very excited to bring your vision to life from an artistic standpoint. So like when you have this idea or pitch for a game, what does it look like then when you take it to the team?
Yeah, man. 2 for 2. I will pitch them the idea. I'll be like, this is what I want to do, and these are the themes I want to hit, and these are the sort of like emotional takeaways that I want to hit. And these are some things that I think we can, cover in that ground. Like in the case of All Systems Dance, we can make a game about using dance moves, and originally like we had made it a rhythm game, and it's not anymore, which is I'm excited to talk about anytime. But I was like, so we could do this and we could do this, and then they all say, well, what if we could do this, and what if we could do this, and then they start kind of piling on, because it's important to me that we make this game together. And like the where you are in All Systems Dance, for example, like the location and stuff like that is something that we kind of slowly chipped away at over time together, thinking about like locations that would be interesting and what that says about the theme and what that means visually and in terms of narrative and audio and stuff like that. It's similarly, like everyone kind of finds a foothold. Everyone finds something where they're like, I think we can do this. I think we could do this. And like, it could be something as simple as our tech director is like, I think I can make this the most stable thing that we've ever made. And, and he sets out to sink his teeth into it. And our UI and UX director is doing a lot of game design and helping me like pick dance moves for this game. So it's really just like I'll throw up the flag and be like, who is able to salute this with me? And I am the sole director of the company, so like if I can get us funding for this, we're gonna do it. But like what that game is once we get the funding will change and shift and sort of reflect the team's input.
For sure. I'm curious, building on that, across your 3 titles at Mighty L, each one has a very distinct, unique style and premise. How has the studio's kind of culture around development evolved over time, and how have you landed on those specific themes for each game, and how kind of have they influenced each other as you've gone forward?
Yeah,
no, it's a multifaceted question, but
no, it's really good. I also just became incredibly aware that I'm drinking out of 2 vessels, so that anyone watching this is going to be like, I wonder what is in both vessels, and this is water, and this is soda water, and I have them both on my desk. So for those following along at home, I just
a reason to watch the YouTube version.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay, so if I can distill the question again, just
sure,
like,
please.
How have those games and their style sort of influenced one another and influenced our own development?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a great question. We, everyone looks at us going from, so sorry, that was an alarm that I forgot to turn off.
Good.
I'll take that clean. Everyone looks at us going from the big con into A Night in the Attic as like, why are you doing a VR game? That's insane. And I agree, to a degree, but it was an idea that my tech director and our art director on the game, Andy Wood, had and wanted to do, and I was like, can we make this? Like, I can pitch this, and it we actually took that on to kind of prove something to ourselves and to other people. So we had done a 2D game, and like it is very like critically loved, and you know, it is a commercial okay, and that's fine. Like, I'm super proud of it. People still message us about how much they love the Big Con, and I wanted to just prove that we could do a 3D game. So I was like, let's just do something in 3D, a small scope, you know, VR title, low price point. Should be really easy, except it has the most complicated rendering shader anyone has ever made, which was, you know, solved by our incredible team, thank God. The answer that should be coming out of my mouth is we learn lessons from every game. But I don't know that we necessarily did on the first two. And we have definitely learned a lot coming into this game. We are building it smarter. And even then, there's stuff that, you know, we are noticing on this game. We're like, oh, you know what? We didn't fully know what we were doing at the beginning. And then we had to go into this long reiteration process to make our game. And that's showing right now. Like, we are bearing out the brunt of fixing our own, you know, mistakes and stuff like that. And maybe on the next game, I will have a clearer idea of what we're doing before we begin to build it. Maybe that's possible, right? And also, you know, the team is good at like calling me out if they think, hey, I don't think we can make this, or I don't think we can do this. Stylistically, I do think we grow in a much more linear pattern. Whereas the fall off of like learning things is maybe, you know, like, and it's not for lack of trying. We just like, we make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. It was hard to go from 2D to VR, and it was hard to, you know, rebuild all of our 2D tools in 3D now to do this. But stylistically and aesthetically, and just like the aesthetics of play, we know what matters to us. We know that like it is better to have fewer things to do if they're cool. And spread that out over, like, we cut down a lot of stuff on the Big Con to just conversation, or we run everything through the conversation system. And that really helped us decide what puzzles are interesting when you get to a night in the attic. We're like, hey, we don't need 10 if we got 6, you know, like we can get rid of stuff. And we are getting better at auditing the parts that do make sense for us. Which I think is great, and like it's bearing out in All Systems Dance. Like, the whole team is able to contribute. Like, hey, I think we should just focus on this, or I think we should do this, and that's huge.
A question about the team and sort of how you guys communicate in that. Assuming that you guys were together pre-pandemic and then sort of had to move to a work from home model. Yeah. What's the team like? Can you describe sort of each one of those eras, and then sort of how your team works together now, if you work in an office or if you work sort of asynchronously?
Yeah, absolutely. We are fully remote. The only two people that work together are me and my wife, who is our operations manager. Everybody else is like, we meet on Discord every day. And when Discord goes down, it's very hard to do anything. It's only happened like twice in all the time that we've been on it. The earliest era of the company is like me at my kitchen table, and then I would go over to our tech director George's house, and we would just like scream ideas at each other and be like, "Are you going to get a job at Ubisoft?" No, you know, like that was our that was our energy. And then after that, we brought on Saffron, our art director, and we would just kind of meet weekly at you know, in person a little bit. And I got a 2-person like hot desk office right before the pandemic, and then we were like, well, we can't do this anymore, and we just stopped, and we never went back. I was this close to getting an actual like $3,000 a month office lease signed right at the end of 2019, and then thank God that didn't happen, because that would have been like, we probably wouldn't have made it through that, you know, without struggling a little bit. The next era was the era of struggling with online work, which was mostly my own, and everybody else was like, hey, it's a pandemic, like, what, I don't know how to do this, I've never done this before. And it was really hard to get anything in the Big Con done for a bit. And then I noticed that everybody else was struggling, and then I was like, oh, it's not that bad. It's like, it's actually as hard as it feels, which was very helpful. And then we launched a Big Con in 2021, and then kind of out of that has come the new era of how we work. And like, we are a people first company. Like, we, everybody is given a constant reminder that like sickness is top priority, health is top priority, family is top priority. Like, everything that's going wrong in the video game is probably fine. We always say there's no such thing as a video game emergency, and that's like the rallying cry of the team. There was a while where I would always say, like, this is how company culture gets born. I would say, if somebody said they're not feeling well, hey, you should take some time off. And then somebody else would say they're not feeling well, like, hey, you should take some time off or take the day. And then I noticed that other people would start saying it to each other. So they'd be like, person C is like, I'm not feeling well. And person B is, you should take the day. And then eventually I would say, hey guys, I'm a little tired today. And they would say, hey, you should take the day. And that sort of pendulum of thought is like, I was like, oh, this is a good place to work. I like it here. I've created something that I'm very proud of. So I don't know, the team is like super positive and really encouraging of each other. Good at giving feedback, but like not, we're not competitive. We're not assholes. It's nice. It's a good thing. We're not a family because we're a company. I don't like it when people say we're a family, because we're not. We're a company of people.
That sounds like something they'd say in All Systems Dance.
It's what they should, and I'll probably put it in there later. But like, we're not. I'm not like, I don't like guilting people into work and stuff like that. I think it's really a crappy problem in our industry. So if anybody works overtime, because sometimes the muse strikes, they're just encouraged to like take it off the next day or whenever we can, and that's really important to me.
One quick follow-up. How many Canadians are there on your team yelling niceties at each other?
Oh, how many Canadians? I think we're at 11, which is, it's either 10 or 11. And that's either including me or not, but let's say 11. And we have one.
Are you not Canadian, Dave?
No, I am. Let's not make this podcast an expose.
Okay.
Our events coordinator, or like events manager, I don't remember what his title is. My buddy Trevor helps us out at PAX East and West, and he's from the great state of Washington. So everybody else, yeah, there we go. Go Seahawks.
Seahawks? There we go.
I got there. Let's talk about sports, something that I really know a lot about.
Who wants to jump in next?
I can jump in, or
yeah, go ahead, Luke. No. How about you?
Jumping back to the game catalog of Mighty L for a little bit, I'm really curious about how you come up with some of these unique gameplay systems. We've touched on the joke as the basis, but I'm thinking about things like pickpocketing as like a main task you do in the big con. I think is really cool. It's really fun. It feels fresh within a space where you make this system vital to the narrative, but also really like entertaining to do. Like, how does that process work? Do you feel like that's a solo endeavor, or do you have kind of the writer's room of processes to collaborate with your team when coming up with some of these systems?
That's great. Yeah. So when I knew that we wanted to make a game about being a con artist, I was like, what are the verbs associated with that? What are cons that we can use, right? What are like, I started looking up different types of cons, and we almost imagined like mechanical things that you would do for every con, like a salting scam where you sprinkle gold on someone's land and tell them it's worth something or something like that. I did a lot of research on cons. We eventually realized we can do all of this with like standard adventure game mechanics, like nothing like use item with.
Incredible.
but even that we pared back on, right? We went everything into conversation. Original pickpocketing mechanic, which I don't think exists anywhere referenced online. The original pickpocketing mechanic was a type of conversation. So you would talk to someone and they would start yammering, and then on like these highlighted words would scroll by, and you had to like trigger a QuickTime event on each highlighted words, and you slowly sneak closer to them and then get their wallet. It's not fun. It wasn't cool. Like, it was worth a shot. And like, it took a long time to do. And remnants of that system are still deep in the big con code, but like we had to back out and be like, you know what? This game is all about conversation and talking to people and moving around a space. What if you could just steal money really fast? Also, that was a pitch from Jill Murray, and she was right. We just like run around. I didn't want it to make it instantaneous, but we do have that accessibility feature. If you don't want to do the mini game, you can just like boop, steal money. That feels great. It's really cool. And the mechanic itself is just a golf swing mechanic, like from a, standard hit the bar in the shrinking bar thing.
Sports.
Yeah, sports. But I think in the context of what you're doing, it's super fresh and fun. And yeah, I don't know. It came from a need in that case to make change the pace of the game and to do something to give the player something more interesting, not more interesting, but like interesting on a different axis to do. Similarly, like all of the core conceit of A Night in the Attic, and what I really liked about it when George and Andrea were like showing it to me, it was like the first game that really made me love VR. Was this thing that this prototype is that you are tilting a labyrinth board and you are pulling objects out of the board, and like that's weird. I don't know. I just want people to do weird stuff. I think it's great. I can play 100 games where I shoot a gun. I have played an entire season of Fortnite this year, and like this season, and it's fine. It's great. I love shooting guns. Fantastic. But like, I don't know. I want to do something. I want to make something different.
Absolutely.
Did the mechanic that you were describing, the original version of that, did that course sort of come out in the like interrupting someone giving you money mini game? Is that sort of
when
the
they're like
evolution
counting
of that?
change? Yeah,
counting change and then interrupting them.
Change breaking was something that we always wanted to do, and then we actually decided to figure out a way to do it for the DLC when we did the free add-on content. So for those that don't know, change breaking is the act of like when someone is counting out change, sort of distracting them or doing a sleight of hand, and then they end up counting out the change wrong, or switching bills or stuff like that. It was like by the time that we built everything around the conversation system, pulled pickpocketing out of it, and then but like everything else had to be in this conversation system for us to build it quickly. So we were like, how do we make change breaking from this conversation system? And we came up with this idea that change breaking is the dumbest thing in our game. It is the stupidest part of the video game. It's my favorite part of the video game. I watched someone play it for an hour at a PAX demo. And every time, so what happens is you're like, hey, can you break a 20, 50, or 100? And there's difficulty rating in all three. And you can't do 20 or 50. You can't do 50 or 100 if you don't have that much money. And then they'll start counting, and then they'll make a noise. And the noise and facial expression triggers you to say either like a joke or an observation, or let them keep counting. That's the whole game. And that was the structure of what we came up with. We're like, we can use these emotions, we can use this choice system. But every single time you interrupt them, they start counting again from 2. So they're like, okay, 2, 3, 4, and then you interrupt them, and they're like, oh, sorry, where was I? 2, 3, 4, and because systemically we had to build this in a quick way. And I was like, oh, I can't like store a variable of like how much money they've counted out. That's going to be impossible. You know what? Let's just make them do it again. And it was absolutely the right call, because I watched someone play it at PAX, and she was like, he's starting at 2 again. And I was like, yes, that is it. Everything in the big con is coming from a decision to make you feel like a con artist. So if it makes you feel smarter than or more powerful than somebody else, it goes in the game.
Definitely get that sense, and I chose to have everyone call me the nickname Boss, so then I'm like, yes, I am the boss, take my change. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's beautiful.
So I guess moving into the future with All Systems Dance, we're dancing, and there's so many variations of the dance, right? We can go back to Soul Train. We can go to today on TikTok, Charlie D'Amelio pouring out a new dance every week. I don't know how that works. I don't
or
have
Dave
TikTok.
Proctor on TikTok.
I'm trying.
Dave Proctor on TikTok.
Dave Proctor and Shannon Fisher, our community manager on TikTok. Let's give credit to who is actually doing the work of learning these dances.
So how are you guys locking in? Okay, these are what we're putting. Like, are you guys consulting some dance experts? How are you looking on TikTok? How are you guys locking in what you're dancing in the game?
First of all, you could have said popping and locking in. But
I'm not on my.
That's why you're the professional.
Right
yeah, sorry, I'm the dance expert here, which is an insane sentence for me to say. So, how are we doing this? Well, we started by doing some research, and we were like, these are cool dance moves. Let's animate these 8 dance moves. And then that was enough for us to be like, okay, I think we're doing something that I think is neat. And then we can't do more than that in a way that is accurate or a way that would make us feel proud without involving some people that are actually kind of embedded in dance. So we have hired 2 dance consultants. One of them is they're both teachers. I don't want to actually misspeak on their bona fides right now. One of them is local, teaches at U of T, and the other one is Rihanna Manuel Pena from What's Good Games, and they both helped us come up with. I would just rattle off all of their qualifications, but I don't have resumes in front of me, and now I feel self-conscious about it. I'll drink one of my 2 waters to solve that, and start thinking about something else. But they helped us come up with our list of dance moves. And part of the the struggle of making video games I was alluding to earlier is that I spent the last day and a half just implementing every single one of them. So they're all in the game now, all of our dance moves. And they're fun. They're spread across a couple styles, and they have historical significance. We got a lot of information about where these moves come from and why they are relevant to have. You can't have we were cutting stuff. We had a whole ballet style, but it didn't fit the sort of needs of what we have broken down here for dance. And I was like, we'll just cut the pirouette, and they're like, whoa, no, you can't cut pirouette. You can't, that's ridiculous. So we have a jazz style, and jazz also contains a pirouette. And I've learned so much about dance moves from these brilliant women. And they've also helped us by showing demos of stuff. And it's really, it's the only way that I think we could make this game is by actually getting human beings that know how to dance, because we're not dancers.
Are you mocapping folks, or can you describe the process of how you're taking idea of dance, working with consultants, and then putting it in the game?
We thought about mocap, and we got a couple game schools in town. There's a couple mocap studios we could go to if we wanted to, but honestly, we wanted it to feel a bit cartoony, look a bit cartoony, be a bit more stylized. And our animator Simon was like, "It's 6 of one, half dozen the other. How you want to start? Mocap always needs cleanup. Stylized isn't going to look like mocap. If you want it to be cartoon, let's just do it off the floor, right?" So we find references, we give them to Simon. Simon animates them, throw them in the game. Push a button, see a dance move. That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That was going to be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joseph.
Just a follow up on this mechanic. Do the dance moves do damage to the robots? And if so, how do you determine the damage values of a dance move?
Okay, let's get into it.
This was going to be my question too, because I was like, okay, how does this all tie into gameplay? Yeah. I would love to know more too.
Since this is going live during PAX West, and there's a chance that we're gonna be chatting about this a lot with folks, let's talk about how this game works. I'm really excited. I think you guys are the first that I'm actually telling this to, and we might do some press interviews at PAX and stuff like that. But just let the world know that you knew first. Mighty L makes non-violent games. We made a puzzle game. We made a adventure game, and I was like, what would our action game look like? And that's where music, rhythm, and then eventually dance came from. What you are doing in All Systems Dance, originally we had a rhythm game, and it was cool, but not expressive, and a dance itself feels very expressive. What you were doing in All Systems Dance is you were actually engaging in kind of cordoned off arena battles with the robot workforce of a giant corporation. You know the one I'm talking about. So these robots are designed to sort of like take care of everybody on this island and look after you and follow you. And we'll nerd out more about story later, but like right now, mechanically, the thing that excites them the most is seeing human beings be their most human. It breaks their brains a little bit. So by dancing, you rewire the robots. So the robots, they don't attack you, but they do get excited. And your dance moves generate hype. Hype is essentially an HP or a health resource on the robot. So the higher the hype of the robot, the more its behaviors change to start moving maybe a little more erratically, a little more weird. So think, think like Final Fantasy 14 raid boss, right? Like we got AoEs, markers on the ground, we're dodging, we're moving, but you're dancing the whole time. Dances generate hype. Hype, has a flow or a multiplier to it, and the sort of like more time you can spend dancing without getting hit or stopping, the better.
I'm sold.
Great.
This sounds really fun.
Great, because we're taking a wild swing on this, and I think it's cool. But yeah, it's there's stuff that is considered in, like, once we get people into the game, I want them to really start thinking about the meta of the game as well. Like we've created tech that I hope is something that people can latch onto, but you can move constantly, but that generates less hype than standing still. But then the robot knows where you are. So it's a constant trade-off of like what you can do and without getting hit. And just, constantly hitting buttons that feels fun and chaining moves together in a way that blends in a, I think, pretty seamless and fun way.
Was there a game combat that sort of inspired you? Because all I can think of is Yakuza at the moment, just like changing between different styles. Yeah. Want to know what the team's inspo was beyond dance there.
Honestly, we were looking at a lot of dance games, obviously, and they're not, like, a lot of them are rhythm based, right? I mean, it's hard not to just say Elden Ring, but like, there's something about, it's not that hard. If you're a big FromSoft fan, you're like, please wishlist our game, but also like, I am not responsible for your experience after that. I can't even think of like what we were thinking more about how the robot moves, and then the player side of it was like Tony Hawk. So like, what if you had not just like a light and a heavy and a special, but what if you had like a bunch of different types of verbs, and how would those be used in a combat scenario? What would it be like if you were skateboarding around something and every time you did a kickflip, it freaked out, and had a little animation break. That was really the genesis of this iteration. And the team, I took a month off last year, right when we were ending with like a prototype that we were working on for something else, and we moved directly into this. And I was like, hey everybody, the rhythm combat that we have is not cool, and go. And then I just left, and then I came back and they were like, arenas, and it's the best. It's so much cooler than I could have imagined.
Nice. So I guess my next question is, why is the dab the most powerful move in the game?
So canonically, in the demo that we're currently building for either a week and a half ago or some other time, because we didn't clinch it.
Dave, September 3rd is the actual date. I'm sorry I said the 10th. It is September 3rd. That is 100% the
But that's
date.
the end of PAX, right? Like that's still the
that is the Tuesday after PAX.
Great. Love it. I thought that was weird. Anyways.
Did you see me sweating? I was sweating. I'm like, oh no, I told Dave the wrong date.
It's fine. It's really fine. The canonically, the dab is the only dance move that our protagonist Carla knows. or retains from her previous life as a dancer, and she's kind of cracking through a little bit of insecurity about being able to dance. She's got this, but like she doesn't like she doesn't she has to learn how to do some other stuff to get through it. So I mean, the stuff you do first obviously is the most powerful. Also, there's a video of me on TikTok where I am testing out a mechanic and I jump off an edge, and it reveals that our current temp animation for when Carla falls is the dab. So she'll just fall through space and just be like, "Argh!" And it's the best. And like, awesome. We might not change it or like randomize it. Like 1 in every 50 is a dab fall instead.
God, that's awesome. I'd love to talk a little bit about the community. At Mighty L. I feel like your studio makes a point to be at PAX regularly, year in, year out. And I think we've seen a trend kind of in the last couple of years for folks to kind of not attend in-person events, push for digital stuff, reach more audience that way. What's been your experience attending in-person shows, and why is it a priority for you and the team?
Yeah. And I mean, people are making those decisions for like health reasons, and we don't.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We don't make
totally justified it as well.
No distance or discrimination on that.
Absolutely.
And like everyone has to do what is safe for them and their community. So that aside,
sure.
What we view in-person events as like a core part of our company and our business. Because we do our own merch, and we sell that merch at PAX and PAX West and PAX East, and we sell it online. And like we get to meet people that, I mean, let's be honest, for the most part, have not played our game. So we get to meet people that have not played our games yet, and get them to play our game, and we get to see them the next PAX, and they remember us, and that's cool. That is good stuff. So like, I wouldn't trade that for anything unless it becomes very cost prohibitive. Again,
right on.
We are a Canadian developer working in Ontario, and we have an additional sort of like, we have grants to help us get to international markets. So we get to write off some of this stuff. I can't recommend that everybody get into a 10 by 20 booth like we do. Like that is a big financial investment, but after merch sales and some grant coverage, we're not out 100%, which is good.
Do you ever have someone buy those like brown paper wrapped like VHS style one year and then come to you and say, "You're the VHS man. I played your game and loved it"?
Someone has done that. Yeah, we have seen. So for those that don't know, we sell blind box VHS tapes for the big con with a copy of the game, like with a code of the game. So you will get like a copy of like, I don't know, Patriot Games, or like fishing tips, whatever we end up buying, whatever my partner ends up buying on Facebook Marketplace from like families downsizing in the Greater Toronto area. That is like one of our favorite merch items. And it was her idea to start doing this, and it's so great because like people are like, "Wait, I don't have a VCR," and we're like, "Nobody does. Just buy it." And then they buy it, and then they open it up, and it's like Scream, and it's got a copy of the big con in there, and I don't know, it makes people laugh. And then sometimes, people will come back the next day. Someone came back the next day, and they were like, "I watched Cats." Thank you. Like the like 90s or 80s Cats, like not. Yeah. I don't think the new Cats is on videotape.
Not James Corden, not weird James animated Corden's, buttholes.
Not the butthole Cats, but the old Cats, the original Cats. And they're like, "Thank you," and then they'll, I don't know, whatever, they'll buy another one, like at Jurassic Park or something. It's really fun to see what ends up in there.
So, like, staying on the merch topic real quick,
Sure.
Like, I remember the first time I played the Big Con at some PAX West some years ago. And I remember, like, I enjoyed the demo, but, like, I was getting ready to leave, and I looked up at all the T-shirts and, like, the VHS stuff, and I was like, this is kind of incredible. Like, this almost seems like one of the merch companies you see at PAX that are just selling video game-related stuff. Like, how do you guys get to the point where you're like, "Oh yeah, we have this sick design"? Because I mean, like the T-shirts, the posters, like the VHS idea, like that's really good marketing on top of the game,
great
right?
shirt.
Like I would, regardless of the game, like I wouldn't have to know about the big con to want to buy that shirt,
Yeah.
right? So like, what's the ideation process on getting all this merch out the door?
Quick side note, 2 anecdotes that leverage the last thing you said. We have a fictional canned meat product in the big con called Horm, and we sell and we also have like a movie poster of Jaws, but it just says shark. And it is wild that people will walk up to our booth, not engage with anything, and go, I want the shark. And then we'll sell them the shark poster, and then they just leave. And then one time, a bunch of people came over, and they were like, oh, Steve, look, it says Horm. And he's like, you guys know Horm? Horm's my word. And it's like an in-joke that he has with all of his friends. And then they just buy 8 Horm shirts, and then they all take a picture, and they're the Horm gang. And it's like the weirdest, most wonderful thing. So I've always wanted to do merch in general. And like when my partner joined the company, it was something that was like really important to her as well. Like how can we create a merch program? And it's something she runs entirely. She helps kind of traffic designs from our art director over to our printer. Printer is, up the street. We do everything. The t-shirts are local, like they're knitted locally. They're like made in Ontario, which is great. And like what I think is cool about, I don't know, having a good idea, right? Whatever it is that people want to engage with that idea in like different ways. And maybe the big con isn't everybody's game, but it is like, I'm going to find people who are like, that's a cool shirt. Maybe I will play that game, or I won't play that game, but I do love that shirt, right? Like that is, and we get to connect with those people. They support us financially, which is a huge opportunity. I would never go to a PAX event without something to sell. That's my decision. And there are people that do it. I do not understand that, like from a business perspective, because it's very expensive, but this helps offset the cost. We connect with people, and those people that buy a shirt help us show off our game to all the people that don't. That's pretty great. And like, I don't know, we're debuting 2 new designs at PAX West, we did. And we sold out. That's how good they were.
Wow.
And they are like, we're taking the shark and putting on a tank top, and all these things will show up online at mightylmerch.com as well, so people can go check it out right now.
Let me actually go get the 12 that I bought.
Thank you.
You talked a little bit about your shirts being made in Ontario. I have to do the Canadiana thing, Dave, where I ask you like, what are your inspirations as a Canadian? Because all I saw was like sticking around and YTV sort of vibes with Jumbo Video vibes with the big con. So can you talk about some of your inspirations, Canadian and not, for the big con?
Absolutely. Jumbo Video is a chain video store. It was not my chain video store in Toronto. Mine was called Video Library, and it was run by this guy named Mehdi, who used to sell my dad the video games that I would rent after I rented them like 3 times in a row. And he is like probably responsible for me liking Mortal Kombat 2, which I think is very interesting. So growing up in Southern Ontario, I got to like engage with YTV, which was, I think Nickelodeon is maybe the closest American counterpart. And it was like, but the thing about YTV, y'all don't even know. YTV is the weirdest cultural phenomenon like ever. It is a TV station. It is, I think they shot most of their stuff downtown, and their headquarters was in like Paris, Ontario, which is in the middle of friggin' nowhere. And it was every show in between the commercials of the show and in between the shows themselves, there were these program jockeys, and they were like video jockeys that like through to the next TV show.
They were like mid-20s people who like looked much younger.
Yeah, they were just a bunch
of
real
real life humans on screen.
They were real life humans on screen. They were just a bunch of kids, and they were told to just do whatever works. It was the weirdest and like most punk thing in hindsight. Like they used to have people just like playing with little toy animals, and like that would be a whole show, and they were just like given the keys to the kingdom. I think the shows that were on there are like, that's where I watched Doug. That's where I watched Our Real Monsters, Sticking Around, and all the stuff that Saffron would eventually come in as our art director and like draw for inspiration for the big con. So I had a fondness there. But I think the like weirdness of YTV, like their logo used to just be like a floating eyeball. It was so strange and 90s gross and just like unique in its own aesthetic. I think YTV is like one of my favorite things that I grew up watching.
If you ever do a PAX, if there's ever a PAX Canada, like you definitely you have a version for the audio listener of an MTV shirt, but it's Mighty Yell.
Sick.
You almost need to figure out YTV, but for Mighty Yell.
Oh, that's really good. There also used to be a show called Video and Arcade Top 10, which has nothing to do with anything.
Please.
But man, it was like a game show where they got a bunch of kids just like, I don't know, they'd be like, they're all playing Banjo-Kazooie, and then they'd go do some segments where they'll interview like, it's also weird. They'll like go talk about how to get down the warp pipe, and then they'll go back and they're like, how's Banjo-Kazooie doing, kids? And they're like, this guy's winning. And then
wait, I literally remember this show. What the heck?
Yeah, Video and Arcade Top 10. And then they'll cut over to somebody else and he's reading a mailbag, and then somebody else is like, here's a cheat code. I learned the code to get to the last level in the SNES Aladdin game from that show and have not forgotten it because my brain is a terrible organ. Aladdin, Jasmine, Abu, Sultan. That will get you to the last level in the SNES Aladdin. And I know that because of Video and Arcade Top 10. Is this something that inspired me on the big con? No, not at all. But now I'm talking about it.
Listeners, please test. Or sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, listeners, please test that while you're watching Patriot Games on your CRT. next to that, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Aladdin, Jasmine, Abu, Sultan.
There we go.
What I was going to say was unimportant. We should move on from Canadian things. We haven't really talked about Night in the Attic.
Yeah.
I'd love to just see your inspiration around working with Labyrinth boards, because that is a core tenet of that.
Yeah.
I know you said before about like pulling things out of the board, but how did you land on Labyrinth boards as game 2?
This is such again, George, our creative director on that game, or one of 2 creative directors on that game. It's like he loves old toys and he loves like physicality, tinkering, and as it relates to VR and stuff. I think that was what was really interesting about it for me, is that not only was it like a room puzzle, where you have an object in your hand and you're using it to, pour water into a jug and use the water to lift something. And like, not only is that happening in the game, but it's also like centered around this, what is essentially a platforming mechanic. Like you're using it to kind of tilt and control. And I love like Kirby Tilt and Tumble and stuff like that. Like, I think those things are fun. They're like really tactile and interesting. When we start looking at that as a starting point, then we can extrapolate all the other fun stuff like, narratively, okay, where are we? We're in this attic. What does that mean for story? We started thinking about, very never ending story. Like you are in your grandmother's attic. There was a magical world there. And we got to lean into a lot of the nostalgia again. And to do it in a way that, I think was very different from the big con. And that's like, it all just kind of tumbled out of itself in a way that we were really proud of.
Is it hard to work in VR?
Yes.
Next question.
It's it produced some like really interesting challenges. Once the team kind of got everything working, development was very like, I was pretty amazed at what they pulled off. Like I just did the writing on that. Like I didn't and some testing and production stuff. But the things that they were able to do once we got the major technical hurdles done, was the most fun part of it. It was really cool. It's like, especially the Quest and kind of quote unquote less strong headsets. You just have, you have a certain amount of processor that you can use. And then once you stay under that, you can do anything in the world. It's that first part. It's the staying under it part.
Joseph, you're an engineer. Do you have questions about
About
making
VR? I mean, VR, I can't keep a headset on longer than an hour, all right? So I barely even, I need to get that figured out on my part first. But I guess I do have a follow-up question, which we can tie VR into, but we, like, and I say we, like I'm at Metal Yell, you've released a couple games now. We're on game 3 and now, or yeah, 3, right? I didn't misspeak there. We're on game 3 and we're getting to the phase where we're having people have hands-on. They already had hands-on, as we have continually said at this point of the podcast, is after PAX. What does that mean for your team, right? You've talked about the grants. So I'm hoping that means you get to alleviate a little bit of the pressure of this just has to be perfect. We have to do this thing that, appeals to the biggest audience. So we make sure that we hit this sales target. So I'm hoping that at events like PAX and stuff, you can genuinely gauge the reaction and enjoyment to your idea, right? So can you walk us through that process of, one, kind of like revealing a game to the world and kind of pushing out this unique and creative idea, but also like once you get to the point of releasing it, you've already released 2 titles, like what is it like slowly getting that feedback from players and kind of internalizing that after you've worked on it for however long?
It's the best. It's the best feeling. You get really, pardon my French Canadian, up your own butt about your video game, where you're just like, I don't know, is this any good? Or this is the greatest thing in the world, and you lose all perspective. The game's not done until somebody else plays it. Like a game is a two-way street. The code needs to be interacted with for it to mean anything. In the same way that a movie needs to be watched. The thing that blows my mind, and I think you hit on this really well in your question here, Joseph, is like, you can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief noticing that people are reacting, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 times better than you thought they would. I think if you are paying attention to what's wrong with your game and you are paying attention to how you're feeling about it and you're being honest with yourself and you're getting feedback among the team, like if you're in a situation, hypothetically, you're a developer that hasn't been able to do any in-person testing for a while. If you're in a situation like that and you're getting feedback from the team, if you're really being critical about what you're putting in front of, your team and yourself, then you're already going to know all the bad stuff. And the stuff that people are going to react to is positive. They're going to react to the positive stuff, and they're going to not notice half the bad stuff. They never notice. We've made so many little changes of things where we're just like, nobody knows that was supposed to be in the game. Get rid of it. The big con was supposed to have 2 other cities. They're not there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything at all. It's better that they're not there, right? So nobody knows what was supposed to be there. And I think people just kind of like video games. And I think in a lot of cases, you get your bad actors, of course, but in a lot of cases, they are willing to meet you halfway. And that's amazing, right? And just like there's this, like, again, sigh of relief, well put, is like you are, oh yeah, like the things that I think I'm doing right are actually correct, and that's great. And I do believe that if you have a little bit of self-awareness, then you're just setting yourself up for positivity, as long as you are encountering a by and large positive crowd, which we cultivate in the Mighty L Discord, and I think PAX is a really positive show. So we'll get, like, most people at PAX are like down. They're cool people. Very rarely do I meet someone that kind of sucks. And like, it's great.
All Systems Dance is being supported in part by Strange Scaffold, the team Xavier Nelson, etc. How did that happen?
I called him in a panic one day. Xavier is a good friend. I think he is probably one of the smartest game designers I've ever met. And he also does the thing of like actually running a company, which is a lot of people just make games. Like not a lot of people think about the entity that they're building. So I admire him greatly, and I just like hanging out with him. And I was in a, I don't know, dark night of the soul, and I messaged him and told him I was stressed out about scope and development and stuff like that. And he said, "Can I help?" And he offered to help pay for some PR costs. So he got the team from 50cc, and he has them. They work together all the time, and he is just helping us make sure that our press beats get sent out, and that is a big help. Alleviates financial pressure, and like we get, I think, an incredibly talented PR agent out of it, and the guidance of someone who I really look up to. And he's the guy that got me on TikTok. He was like, "You should get on TikTok." And I was like, "All right, I'll do it," and I'm enjoying it. So, in spite of myself, in spite of I didn't post anything today because I was too stressed out. But I'll do something later.
Is it hard to TikTok like in public? Because you do some of it in public, right?
Yeah, I like walk around. It's good. It's like a little like Canadian thing, but it's like very Rick Mercer energy of like I can walk through the street and just talk to myself. I don't know. It's okay. You can do it, with. I think most people are accustomed to seeing strangers talk at their phones. So once I accept that, then I don't look weird. And then I just have to not, I'm not doing like not doing like an unboxing video on the street or anything. Being like, what?
Ripping open copies of VHS tapes that you've accumulated on Facebook Marketplace,
paper
right?
everywhere. Yeah. Whatever. It's a way to communicate in-process stuff about the game. Something that I learned from watching Strange Scaffold is that they'll share stuff really early, which is great. I want to do that more. Releasing a game takes forever. I just want to show them like, hey, look, I made anime speed lines, and now I can just do that. You should follow me on TikTok. I'm Positive Laser on every platform.
How do you know when a game's ready to announce?
So many answers to that question. I don't know. Panic is one. There's also like sometimes you end up in a situation where you're like, well, we want this out in a year. We should announce it now. And that's what we did. We were like, we could wait until it's perfect, but we could also just cut a really short, fun trailer. And that is also very satisfying. When you're cutting a short, fun trailer, you don't have to make a live action portion like we did, which was filmed in my office here. I took apart the whole office. This little framed picture of a bunch of video game controllers was our TV on the wall, which is a fun little. When you watch this, you'll see it. But yeah, it was time, and like I wanted the team to be able to talk about it. I want to be able to talk about it. I want to like get going, and I knew that PAX was coming, and like that we would or would not have a demo at PAX, depending on how this podcast went. So it was June was the time.
So I guess I have one more follow-up question, and it's not really a follow-up. I want to talk about PAX for a second, because I do remember when I saw the Big Con booth, I had heard about this game. I wanted to try the demo, but I do remember there being a lot of energy in that booth. Like I could tell that you guys were there to have a good time, right? And people who go to PAX know, right? You'll go to the booths where maybe someone's just repping a game, so they don't really know a lot about it. Or sometimes this is this person's whole life. This is their passion. They'll talk to you about it for hours if you want. But I remember there was just so much excitement coming out of that booth, and we were telling jokes across the people playing demos. Like for you and your team, like what is the vibe leading up to PAX? Like obviously, I'm gonna break the fourth wall here. We're leading up to PAX, right? So what's the vibe across the team, knowing that you're about to show this game for the first time and like actually talk to people about it?
Since this podcast is coming up after PAX, and you saying we're leading up to PAX, it is true. We are always leading up to PAX. There's always a PAX happening somewhere.
Send the man to Australia. It's happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, you touched on something that I love about and that a lot of people love about our booth, is that it's always staffed by the team. It's always staffed by staff. And like, if All Systems Dance is an enormous success and you're listening to this in 5 years and that's not true, I apologize. But also, there's newer episodes of this podcast. You should just listen to that. You don't have to do the backlog for everything. It's exhausting. But we love being the ones that help make the game. We love being the ones that talking to people, and like people will ask us, they'll be like, hey, like, how did you do this? Or I like the art. Are you the artist? Or that's a really funny joke. Like, can we talk about that? And we get to actually have those conversations versus like going to play Tekken 8 and someone's like, let me know if you have any questions about how to block or whatever. There's a big sign that says like block is this button. I don't actually know if there's a command block in Tekken 8. Anyways,
I honestly don't know either. We're still trying to figure that out.
I can completely derail myself sometimes. The team is like, oh, this is the game. Like, we're bringing this. Like, we're getting to show this to people. Like the energy is starting to build. The stress of making it, a little bit more bug free than it is right now is always something that we're going to have to deal with. But eventually you hit a point where you're like, see what people think of this. Our level designer, Cassie, is like, people are going to play this. And I built this level. I'm like, yeah, that's neat. That's a cool thing that you did. And it's really fun. And, she's doing stuff that is like right on the money for what I want people to see. So I think we're bringing exactly the thing that we want people to see.
That's perfect. I will say that I have this story, which might be cringe, so I apologize in advance. But I was playing the BitCon, and I don't remember if I was talking to someone on the team or if I was just playing the demo. But while I was playing the demo, I remember this specifically. This was years ago, and this is still in my mind. And it may sound cringe, but I promise it's a great thing. Dave, a girl walked past or walked up while I was playing this demo or talking to someone, and you were like, hey, Kathy or whatever, I talked to you yesterday. Thanks for playing the demo. And she's like, my name's not Kathy, and I did not play this demo. And there was a decision that needed to be made at that moment. And I'm watching this all unfold.
And what did I do?
I'm excited about the game and the experience. You doubled down.
Oh, yeah.
You doubled down. You said, no, you're Kathy, right? I talked to you yesterday. She was like, no, that was not me. And me watching this whole exchange, I was like, this is fucking awesome. I will never forget this moment. And I was like, I love this booth because this guy, like, I don't know why you decided to double down, but I love the energy. And it was just such a fun interaction. And even though it was just like the girl was like, what is going on? I could tell you were having a good time still. I was having a good time. And like, every time I see the BitCon booth, I remember, man, those people over there are awesome. Like, he just misidentified this girl, called her the wrong name, doubled down, and
Probably
I loved
tripled down.
I had met
the comedian Lisa Wallen on the PAX West floor, and I was like, you should come by. And someone came by with the same hair and height, glasses, and a mask on. And I was like, Lisa.
That might have been it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm not Lisa. And I was like, no, like, and what I heard her say was like, I didn't say I would come by. Like, I thought she was denying something else. I was like, no, you said you're Lisa, right? And I did double down with her name. And then I ended up giving her some stickers and stuff because I felt like a big dummy. But, the important thing is that I was having a good time because I am very rarely embarrassed.
But I mean, I think that speaks to like being at PAX and being able to see developers and people show personality like that, especially after I played the game and it's like a completely unique experience. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I'm not going to forget these developers. Like, I have other stories of like going to the Shot One booth and like the director of that game calling their game like a cockroach because nobody can kill it. And they're continuously working on it. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is just like, I love when you see that emotion coming from these developers. And I think a lot of people in the gaming industry don't really get to see that from these indie games. Like, they see these games announced at these showcases and they're like, oh, that looks cool. Maybe they'll forget about it or whatever. But I really do think it's super important when you get to see these creators behind these games and say, oh yeah, these people are cool. They're passionate about their ideas. And like you said, like when you're saying it's super important to be there to sell merch and all this thing. I think this all adds back to why we're so excited to talk about these games with you, because we can tell you are super passionate about it. So
thank you. Yeah, if you come to our booth, we will not remember your name, but you will remember us.
Let's go.
Games are made by people, and like, I don't know, we love it. And if we can share that fact, not even the games, just that there's a human being here that's making a thing that you did or did not like, and we can talk about it. That's great. That's the best thing in the world.
I don't think we can top that story. So with that, Dave, I think we're going to say thank you for coming.
My absolute
thank you for sharing such wonderful stories about your games, your team, and your interactions at PAX. If folks want to hear all the things, if people want to hear you on the internet, where can they find you? And please encourage them to wishlist All Systems Dance as well.
Yes. So if you want to find me, I am at Positive Laser on all platforms. If you want to find Mighty L, at Mighty L, join our mailing list, and please wishlist our game. It really helps. The game is called All Systems Dance. It's a game about using the power of dance to destroy what is essential, but because I'll get in trouble for saying that, I'm sure.
Should I bleep you there when you said those words?
Yes.
Done. People will question it.
Find the link in the description below.
What if I just say also the word and then also say the word and then you can just mash them all together? This is a terrible idea. I regret this.
And hey, also if you have Epic Games, you may have the Big Con also.
Yeah.
So check your Epic Games library, because you might already have this game and you should play it. The Big Con, at least. We are going to wrap this show by saying all the three things that we typically say at the end of every one of our shows. If you love this program, please follow Dave, do all the things. But for us, make sure to give us a follow on social media at Crossplay Convos on Twitter. Leave this podcast a review, because reviews really help. And send this podcast to a friend, because that's how people hear about podcasts. And with that, my friends, I don't have any fun things to end the show with, so I'll just say, dance!